This recording will demonstrate the Meditech Expanse EMR for Goshen Health, including screens and functionality in place as of December 2019. The Meditech Enterprise Medical Record, or EMR, is a tool used by healthcare providers to view the healthcare data over the course of a patient's lifetime. Information will never purge from the EMR. It is a repository of data that can be viewed from multiple applications based on user access. The user should log in with a user procedure. The Meditech menus may vary by access. In this demonstration, the user will launch the EMR through the Physician Care Manager menu button. To find a patient, there are several options, and this can also vary by access. We'll start with patient lists. From patient lists, there's two commonly used options, the recently accessed and any location. For any location, click on that, and then the Goshen Health facility. It will bring up a list of the inpatient and outpatient locations. When you click on one of those, then you can see the list of patients and can select in that way. To go back to the list, click on the List button, and to see the recently accessed patients, you can then choose from patients that you had most recently chosen. If the patient that you're trying to find, you haven't looked them up yet, you can go to the Find Patient button. You would type in the last name first, comma, first name, and you can use partial names in this situation as needed if you don't know the exact full name. When the patient that you're looking for comes up in the screen here, you click on the line and then the chart will open. The summary panel is the default view. As you can see, there are other panels over here on the right-hand side. They will be highlighted in red if it is a panel that has new information that this user has not viewed yet. The header at the top is static and will not change. The data will not change on there regardless of which panel or which screen you are viewing. To look at this first section, if there has been a patient picture taken in registration, there will be a camera icon to the left of this eye icon. The eye icon just contains a brief snapshot of some of the information that is seen in various other places throughout the header or throughout the EMR. You have the age, the gender, the birth date, the registration status, the unit, and the room and bed number for that patient. In the middle section are the code status in red, the height and weight, BSA, BMI, and the allergies. It's a little covered up by this screen, but the allergies will be listed there. The V number is considered the visit or account number and is the number assigned to just the visit that you are viewing. If you are viewing more than one visit, there will be multiple. It will just have the word multiple here and you will not see a specific number. The M number is the medical record number and the E number is the EMR number. On the Summary tab or panel are multiple pieces of information, and we'll go through each of these buttons. On this Clinical tab, there are several pieces of information. The Patient History section includes data that has been reported across multiple visits for medical history, surgical history, family history, and social history. When a user has updated or reviewed these items, the date, time, and the name of that user will appear here on the right-hand side of the screen. So as I review this, the time changes from where it had been reviewed before. The allergies also shows up here. Again, if the access is specific to this user, there may be an edit button here, there may not be. It just depends. But that is, the same allergies will be listed here as is up above. There is more detail that can be viewed if possible. Active medications are listed. There will be more information that we cover in medications a little bit later in the tutorial. Home medications are listed here. based on the information that has been received for the patient. The patient's preferred pharmacy. Immunizations will show here if there were administered immunizations in this stay or even throughout the patient's history. There may be external immunizations that are pulled in later during the stay, so that may be populated with more information as the patients visit or as their time frame goes along. The legal indicators tab shows data that's been documented for specific questions that fall into this kind of information. Code status, smoking status, there are very specific questions that might show up here. The most important ones or common ones are the advanced directives information, which will show here based on what has been provided in the registration process. If there are documents that have been filed here as paper documents on site, like this patient shows, in order to see those documents, you would need to click on the All Visits button. And then you can see these scanned documents. Whenever you see a camera icon, you can click on that, and that does actually bring up the actual document. You could print that or just view it as needed. But that can only be seen under the All Visits tab. Demographics shows demographics for the basic patient information, the guarantor, contacts, emergency contacts if they have been entered in registration, and insurance information. Just a note about emergency contact information, that is also documented by the nurse during the admission assessment. And that information is stored in the patient care panel under an assessment, which will be reviewed later. Those queries or questions are a little bit different, so they may show different information. Just keep that in mind. Appointments, authorization referrals, and surgeries are not on this specific patient example. They would show up if there were in specific examples of outpatient appointments that were scheduled. So I will show an example of what shows up under the surgery tab. So if there was a surgery done, that will show up as looking like this. The procedure, the surgeon, the date and time. If there were multiple surgeries, they could be sorted by these different headers as needed. The care team will show the providers associated to this patient. If there are differences between the providers with different visits, then you would see these two buttons at the bottom of the page highlighted so that you could see the current care team or the by visit care team, and that's only if there was a difference between multiple visits. The review visit tab gives basic information on the history of the current visit. To see more detail, you can click on this tab at the bottom, button at the bottom, and again, you're looking at information that was specifically provided or entered during the registration process. History and problems. This will default to the problem list with problems that are active and that have been entered by the provider. Again, this can pull through from a previous visit. If a problem has been resolved or deleted, this button for resolved, inactive, or ruled out will be lit, and that problem will be listed here. The All button shows all of them together, both the active and the resolved. The Patient History button shows the same information that was in the summary panel under the patient history, and then the overview shows both of these pieces together, the problems and the history. In some of the upcoming panels related to results, lab results, vital signs, et cetera, there will be some options to graph those, and in each, where it's applicable, I will demonstrate how graphing can be done. But you may see these buttons at the bottom of the screen for graphing options. So under New Results, this will show labs and reports that are new. At the top of the screen, the boxes will be lit as applicable to show new to you, that's this user, new in the last 24 hours, and new in the last 48 hours. Lab results will show at the top of the screen and reports show at the bottom of the screen. So if there are a lot of lab results, you may have to scroll to get down to the bottom and actually see then the reports. Clinical panels. These are customized screens to consolidate information from all aspects of the EMR into one screen. If there is data for the patient on that panel, it will show up. If there isn't data that's recorded on that panel, it will not appear. One example is the diabetes clinical panel. You can see how there are different pieces of data that are organized as Meditech has built these and specifically for a diabetic patient. Here is where, here's where graphing can come in helpful. Before I show that, just to be clear, here in the clinical panels at the bottom, you can see a different time frame, and click on those. It just shows the view a little bit different in that way. To graph an item specifically from this panel that doesn't say is not a vital sign, you can right-click on that option and click graph. Then as you click the graph button down here, it will bring up a graph table on the next screen. And here you can also then change the view for a time frame as well. Vital signs will show all of the vital signs in this type of a view. There will be a scroll bar at the top if there is more data to view for that patient. There is a graph vital signs box that brings up each individual, all of the acceptable vital signs that have been chosen. If you prefer not to see a certain one, you can uncheck that box and remove the check marks, and then you will not see that. If you have added a specific from another section, you can also graph here, but these are already graphed in the graph vital signs. But you could choose temperature, for instance, if you only wanted to see those two items in your specific graph box. INO intake and output will display and calculate intake and output from documentation on interventions and from the IV spreadsheet on the medication administration record. The buttons at the bottom can be used to edit the display as desired. The various measurements can be graphed as well. So if I want to graph urine output, for instance, I can right-click on that, choose graph, and then I can see that is now added to my options for graphing here. There's also a cumulative INO button at the bottom that will give the INO totals for the entire stay. And then you can go back to the detailed INO by clicking on the other button again. Medications shows various views. It defaults to the active medications. You can include discontinued just to see the discontinued medications, or you can see them all together. The default will again be to active. If you want to see just a list of the medications, you can click on the list button and that shows this view, or you can keep the detailed view. The MAR button shows a view-only screen of the medication administration record. So there's information that you could see here related to administrations. There are some other views that would be more helpful possibly on administrations, but this is one option for seeing the MAR. The medication snapshot will show the list of medications that this patient has had within several different steps of their stay. And you can expand each list to see the medications in each of those steps. So on admission, these were the medications, these were the providers, there were none assigned at this point. For the admission, then there were new medications that were added at admission, and you can see then the providers who were associated to those. Then at discharge, you can see when the discharge is finalized, you can see which medications the patient was sent home with and which providers did that discharge. The current infusion titration shows any medications that are being given through an IV infusion, and it will show when that infusion was started, when it might have been stopped, or when it was fully infused and then a new bag started. That will show up under this button. The laboratory panel defaults to just this selected visit. If you want to see more visits, you can click on the 6x all visits most recent. The selected visit will have just the current information. If there are different types of labs, there will be different types of buttons that would be added. In this example, there were only lab tests resulted for hematology and chemistry. If you want to see those together, click on the All button and it will show them in a list like this. Labs that are in a critical, in a high or low range will be shown in yellow. And this also applies to vital signs. If there is a critical high or low with a vital sign or with a lab result, it will be in pink. And here it shows the other types. Microbiology will show, again, defaults to the selected visits. You can look at all visits if you desire to do that. Tests that are pending will indicate that in the procedure result column. So this would say pending instead of final. When the result is finalized, there will also be a report icon here, and that can be clicked on, and you will see the report then. If there have been sensitivities performed, there will be a hashtag in the column, the grid column, and clicking on that will show the details for susceptibility. For the blood bank, I'm going to find another patient. So if this panel will show if the patient either had tests performed in preparation for a transfusion. It will also then show if they had a transfusion, these are the tests, and then if they had a transfusion, it will show what was actually given. This gives the detail on that blood transfusion and the vital signs that were taken. There's also a button at the bottom, Blood Bank History, which gives a printed report of the full information that was recorded during that blood transfusion. The reports panel will show different reports for history and physical, progress notes, discharge summary, consultations, and so forth. The general tab is the default. There will also be possibly the imaging reports are shown here, pathology. Surgery is a specific type of document that for a general surgery consult note that shows up under the surgery tab. To see all of them together, you can click on the All button, or you can separate them out by this type of document. For the imaging reports, there's a paper report that the icon can be clicked, and that shows the report from the radiologist. Then the icon actually will launch the actual X-ray or the actual image for that patient. So that will also be seen in for an EKG report. I don't have an example of that here, but there will be an icon that you can actually see the strip for the EKG, and it is not just a scanned document. So you could have a scanned document for some of those items, but clicking on that will be able to see what the actual report is. Pathology also has a report that pulls up that you can see at that point. Patient care will show documentation for nursing, for ancillary uh, departments, allied health, nutrition services, social work, etc. So there can tend to be a large amount of data in this section. There are different ways to sort it. The default is to sort it chronologically. That can be helpful if you want to see the most recent information, but the most common use of sorting is the name. And this will alphabetically show all of the different assessments that have been done for that patient. By selecting one of these, you then have the buttons at the bottom. If you click View Snapshot, that will show just this most recent assessment for that time and that date. To view history, then it will show all of the different instances where that assessment has been documented. The Documented By button will give the names of the different users who have been documenting on those assessments, and that will be alphabetical when it is more than one name listed. The provider type will be registered nurse, social worker, dietitian, etc., based on the type of role that user has had. The plan of care shows the care plan and the detail associated to it when it was added and the different changes that have been made. The history will show responses from the past medical history assessment. In this case, there were no positive or yes answers. Maybe the full assessment was not done for this example. Those yes answers would be listed here, and then all responses that were specific questions on the past medical history assessment would show with the response. If there were yeses, they would be mixed in with that. Notes are used for free text notes that are not discrete fields, but just free text types of things. A button will appear for each note type that has been entered. So in this example, we only have nursing notes. There also could be the ancillary or allied health notes for nutrition services, social work, care management, etc. And those buttons would appear as those notes are finished. You can click on, choose the one that you would like to view, and you can view selected. Or to view selected dates, for instance, if you have many notes and you want to see all of the nurses' notes for December 31st, you could view selected dates, and without having to click every single one of those notes, you can see by that date because you selected that one. This concludes the demonstration of the Meditech Expanse electronic medical record.